Matthew Stafford and Travis Etienne are sneaky good plays in Week 16. We dig into the best sleepers and DFS plays of the week on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. We're here for you every day, Monday through Friday, helping you win your fantasy football leagues. I am one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. And I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by Hillsdale College. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. All right, every day on Friday, we go through our favorite sleeper of the week at each position that we agree on. And then after that, we'll get into our daily fantasy talk. Now, maybe you're out of your playoffs and you want to just play some daily fantasy football. We'll help you with that so you can still be in the game. Or whenever we're talking about DFS, we're just really talking about guys we like this week. So it will be a fun show. Let's dig into our sleepers. Starting at quarterback, it's Matthew Stafford against the Jets. Before last Thursday in a downpour, he was putting up some really good games and has been quite consistent. So I like him. The Jets defense has been really bad lately.
Yeah, when you look at Stafford, I mean, once the weapons are out there, Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. I know Cooper Kupp put up a 0. That usually does not translate to a good Stafford game. The weather was not good. Puka Nacua still came through, but he tends to be in his comfort zone when he's thrown all over the field to different guys and getting the big plays, random big plays that we get from DeMarcus Robinson or someone like that, right? That helps Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. And the Jets, again, they've been really not looking good in the secondary. That used to be their absolute strength, but now they're beatable inside, they're beatable outside. It's just not very good at this point. And you figure, again, we like the potential of the Jets scoring points at home, the way Aaron Rodgers is playing. We talked about Aaron Rodgers versus Matthew Stafford, like an old Packers-Lions game. We could have some points in this one. So I do like it. Let's hope the weather cooperates. I think it will. It's going to maybe tough to just get Kyren Williams to dominate this game. They could be even or fall behind. I could not be surprised if either happens, right? So in that sense, they're going to have to put the ball up, and I do think Stafford is just going to compile from the pocket, much like Aaron Rodgers this week.
Yeah, there's been some bad quarterbacks putting up points against the Jets. I don't want to call Kyler Murray a bad quarterback, but he hasn't been good for fantasy. He recently put up 29 points against them. Anthony Richardson, 28. Tua Tagovailoa, 23.5. Mac Jones last week put up 19 points. So Matthew Stafford should have no issues having a good game this week. Now, moving on to our running back, it's a risky one because it could be one of two guys, right? It could be Travis Etienne or Tank Bigsby against the Raiders, but this Raiders matchup is good. The Jaguars running game, especially just like as the running backs in general, right? And especially Etienne has been coming alive as of late. We saw Etienne have 18 touches last week, 14 carries, which is a season high. So we're leaning towards more the Etienne side against the Raiders. He's been a lot more efficient over the last 2 games too on the ground. But it's going to come down to who gets the touchdowns. And if the Raiders can put up any points where Etienne would be needed in the passing game, because he's been getting a lot of targets from Mac Jones too. He has 4 receptions in each of the last 2 weeks, Etienne does. So I like Etienne, though. I think he's a really solid low-end RB2 play this week.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this is where we're at with Travis Etienne. He has to even show up on our sleeper list. But that's the nature of it. Like, he was a guy that you drafted and you felt somewhat good about, right? If you had him, you're like, okay, I might have an RB2. I can plug and play every week, but he's not been usable for a lot of weeks. He was injured for a little bit of stretch, and then we had the Tank Bigsby kind of random breakout that we thought could happen last year. So there's been a lot of factors working against Travis Etienne. It's just kind of where the Jaguars had to like clean some things up, right? Where they had all these injuries and just a lot of people not playing healthy. And Mac Jones is in there. He keeps it pretty simple. The offense, it just doesn't have to be so creative or do too much. And it just can get the ball in the hands of a few guys. And Etienne, Tank Bigsby, Brenton Strange, and Brian Thomas Jr. in the passing game. That's how it goes right now for Mac Jones. So we also like it that they're not involving a bunch of people, and that can help Etienne as a receiver as well.
Another guy we like this week, moving to wide receiver, it's Jalen McMillan against the Cowboys. It seems that the Buccaneers have found their second go-to guy, right? Outside of Mike Evans, this Cowboys matchup is a good one. The Cowboys have allowed the 6th most receiving yards to wide receivers this season. And McMillan keeps finding the end zone too, right? It's not just the receiving yards that he's putting up. He had a career high 75 receiving yards last Sunday, which is great. And that was in a hard matchup against the Chargers. So that was impressive. But he's also scored 3 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks. So back-to-back good fantasy weeks. If this wasn't a great matchup, then maybe I'd say, we can't really follow just the touchdowns, but also like the targets have been there, the receiving yards last week and the touchdowns, all put together with a good matchup. Jalen McMillan's a solid enough flex option this week that you can start him if you need to.
Yeah, and you figure the Cowboys are going to have to roll their coverage a little bit to Mike Evans after the monster week he had last week. I know Evans will be motivated. He could get his numbers as well. He's trying to push to that 1,000-yard season, but there's time after this. They're playing the Saints and Panthers, so you figure there's going to be plenty of time to put up the numbers there in those 2 games if he doesn't get it here. So Cowboys still have Deron Bland. Trevon Diggs has been hurt. So when you look at that, Bland is actually the better cover corner. We'll see if they put some double teams on Evans. Clearly, the attention on Evans has helped McMillan a little bit. And when we look at those Washington receivers that are in the NFL, Rome Odunze, Jalen Polk stepped in a good situation. Odunze was a high draft pick, but I think McMillan was forgotten. They just took an injury, right, to Chris Godwin to kind of make the Bucs accelerate his evaluation and develop him a little bit more. That's what you're seeing. Liam Cohn is a great offensive coach, and you've seen McMillan produce big time the last 2 weeks. And again, he should get a favorable matchup here away from Evans.
And then our last sleeper of the week at tight end is Dalton Kincaid against the Patriots. He comes back, first game from injury, only plays 48% of snaps. He had a team high 7 targets. He tied with Khalil Shakir for the most targets on the Bills. It turned into 4 receptions, 53 yards. Like, that's solid, especially for what we're used to out of tight ends this year, outside of the top guys. And Kincaid, what he's been doing, like that's a solid game. He's typically around 70%, 80% of snaps played, so you would expect that his playing time is going to increase this week. And the Patriots really haven't played many good tight ends this year, but when they have, they've allowed receiving yards to them. Just last week, Trey McBride, 87 yards. Jonnu Smith in week 12 had 87 yards and a touchdown. Earlier on in the season, George Kittle had a touchdown against them in 45 yards. Like, it's not like they're a good defense at all, but it's not like they're stopping tight ends. They just haven't faced a lot of good ones.
Yeah, Dalton Kincaid, that was encouraging. He led the team in targets in his return there from the knee injury. And he's not a big red zone guy. We saw him make that one play where Allen was scrambling around and found him in the back corner. He doesn't seem to be a red zone guy. He seems to be a lot like Dallas Goedert, right? It's a good comparison that they don't throw a lot to him in the red zone, a younger version of Dallas Goedert. But he's a field stretching tight end. He can get it done. He got the 7 catches, I think 53 last week. So when you look at that, he's going to be able to get some chunk plays, and that kind of helps him. Like if you can get 3 chunk plays, then you're looking at 3 for 60 right there, and then it's a decent start. So, again, they have to just involve him enough. Again, this shuffling of this receiving corps has happened all season, right? And Mark Cooper's been hurt when he's been over. Keon Coleman's been hurt. So they haven't had a lot of continuity here, but Kincaid, again, is still a very reliable and viable target for Josh Allen whenever he needs to be bailed out along with Khalil Shakir.
Absolutely. All right, let's transition over to our daily fantasy talk. We'll get into our favorite picks of the week. If you are not on the app, Vinnie will tell you how to download it and get started with us in just a moment. And then, of course, we'll end today's show with our best FanDuel lineup. Stick around. We'll be right back after the break.
This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is sponsored by PrizePicks. If you love watching the game, you're going to love PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy, whether it's football, basketball, or any of your favorite sports. PrizePicks makes your holidays bigger and brighter. So check it out right now. Sign up if you don't have an account there. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on PrizePicks. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas and offering 2 free picks in December. So when your picks hit, PrizePicks makes it easy to cash out as well. You can get your money in as fast as 15 minutes deposited where you want it. So they're going to take care of you there when you win, and you have a chance to win big here this holiday season. This week, check out the games. So we have the Broncos-Chargers. We'll unveil our PrizePicks picks of the week. We have some pretty good ones this week for you in the show a little bit later. So we had a lot of good stuff yesterday. So a lot more coming here with that here on PrizePicks. It's quick, Easy, simple, so much fun to challenge yourself and your friends. They're only at PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly for your first $5 lineup. That's right, just $50 instantly when you play. Just $5. PrizePicks, run your game.
It's that time of the year. The college football playoff is back, and with newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoff begins on December 21st, starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern, leading into our first matchup, the Southern Methodist University Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. All right, time to get into our favorite prize picks of the week. These are all guys that we really like in fantasy this week that we think they can have big performances. Vinny, start with your favorite one that you feel is just a lock to hit this week.
Yeah, last week I was a little disappointed because Rico Dowdle and Jordan Addison really cleared their yardage totals, no problem. Then I looked at Bryce Young, and he needed like 13.5 rushing yards. He needed 2 more yards. He had 12 in the game, so that close, but that's how it goes. Some of you get really easily, some are more difficult. Well, this week we're going to try to go 3 for 3, the both of us, and I'm digging deep here. Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I actually noticed in the last game he had to play against the Bengals a little bit there, and he had 44 rushing yards. His number in this one is 24.5. Now, I looked at his history of when he's seen significant snaps or started. He hasn't been a big taking off and runner, but I think he's going to do that more. The Bengals do also allow the most yards rushing to quarterbacks on average per game because of the way they play their zone defense. And DTR, again, had that history where he can get to that 44-yard mark. I think if he gets to 30, we'll be very happy. That's about where the Bengals average there. So I like it. 24.5 is the number of rushing yards for Dorian Thompson-Robinson starting from the Browns. At the Bengals, I'm going more there, as we always do on Locked On Fantasy Football.
It does seem like anyone can do whatever they want against this Bengals defense. So I like it. Now, another terrible defense is the Panthers, and the Cardinals get to face them this week. And Trey McBride gets to face them. And I don't like sprint to PrizePicks. I don't know what to tell you. His projection is sitting at 66.5 receiving yards. That will go up by Sunday. I promise you, probably into the 70s. Like, McBride is averaging 72 receiving yards per game this year. So it's already much lower than his average. He's hit at least 70 receiving yards in each of the last 5 games. And this is an absolutely amazing matchup. The Panthers are so bad they're so bad against everyone, but against tight ends in particular, like every tight end is scoring touchdowns and putting up receiving yards. And I'll say like McBride scoring a touchdown, like he has to score his first one this week too. I really think it has to be coming because he's getting targets in the red zone. So Trey McBride more than 66.5 receiving yards. So it's just, it feels like a trap because I'm like, it seems too easy. It seems too easy.
Yeah, the Rico Dowdle one felt like a trap last week as well against the Panthers on the ground. I think it was 83 or something. He had like 149 rushing yards. So maybe you'll get double here from Trey McBride, and then you just won't have to worry. You'll get it in the first half, and then you can just cruise here and just look at your other picks and make sure they hit. Now, I've got another one here involving a quarterback. It's Cooper Rush, more than 222.5 passing yards against the Buccaneers. I like that number. Again, in games where the Cowboys are challenged or have to do anything, he has to throw a lot. And when he's playing bad teams, he doesn't throw. They've gone nuts. Last week, we didn't get to this number because Dowdle was doing all the damage. Well, this week, he's going to have to drop back and pass a lot more. So again, if we do some quick math here, if he throws 40 times, right, and he has even 6 yards per attempt, you're already clearing that at 240. So that's what we're looking for. Big volume here from his dropbacks this week against the Buccaneers. And figure Baker Mayfield, we love him on the other side. You figure Bucs, we just talked about Joe McMillan, Mike Evans. They should light up the scoreboard. The Cowboys should be playing from behind. They're terrible defensively at home. So I think Cooper Rush easily clears his 222.5 passing yards at home against the Buccaneers on Sunday night.
Yeah, we really like Baker Mayfield in this game too, which means that the Buccaneers are going to be putting up a lot of points. So Cooper Rush is going to have to pass a lot to keep up. Love it. Now, this one, Jonathan Taylor, he hasn't scored a touchdown in quite a long time. I mean, he did score one last week, but he decided he needed to celebrate early and not actually cross the line with the ball in his hands. But he's going to actually cross the line with the ball in his hands correctly this week against the Titans. So I'm taking the more on a half a rush or receiving touchdown so he can score through the air or on the ground. Both will count. And the Titans, who he's facing this week, have allowed the most scrimmage touchdowns to running backs this season at 18. Chase Brown had 2 touchdowns against them last week. Tank Bigsby had a touchdown against them in week 14. Both Brian Robinson and Chris Rodriguez had a touchdown against them in week 13. I can keep going on and on and on. Running backs just score against the Titans. Jonathan Taylor has to make it up. He has to make it up to his team, to his fantasy people, and he will. He's scoring at least 1 touchdown in this game.
Yeah, and he also had to miss the first matchup because you had the combination of Trey Sermon and Tyler Goodson in there for him. So he didn't get to play the Titans. He likes playing in division games and putting up numbers. So he missed the first one. The Colts are barely alive in the playoff picture. That loss to the Broncos really hurt. It kind of probably sparked by Taylor losing a fumble, but they're still alive. They just have to focus, win here. Taylor needs to finish strong here to help his team. So I like it. He finds the end zone at least once against Tennessee. Let's hope for 2. You like 2, and let's hope we get there. And if you're feeling a little bit frisky and want a little bit more in demon, you could go for 1.5 touchdowns. So that's up to you guys, but this is a good place to start. Now I have Justin Jefferson. Yeah. Going pretty easy. 79.5 receiving yards against the Seahawks. Now, their coverage is not very good against this type of receiver. They're actually kind of better on the inside. And Justin Jefferson, again, the Seahawks give up a lot of yards to receivers, not necessarily touchdowns. Jefferson doesn't score all the time when you want him to, but he is coming off a game where he did score. It doesn't really matter. You need 79.5 receiving yards. I think you'll see it. I mean, I think Sam Darnold will get it to him. Again, it's a little tougher matchup for Jordan Addison. It's not so easy for TJ Hawkinson. So I think you'll get Jefferson targeted a ton in this game. I could see him getting 14 to 15 targets here and kind of being the lifeblood of this passing game. So that's what he is for most weeks. But I think he easily clears this 79.5. I think he easily puts up 100 this week. I'll just call it. He's going to have 100. So more on 79.5 receiving yards at Seattle for JJ.
I like it. And I'm also going with the wide receiver here for my last pick of the week. It's Keenan Allen, more than 53.5 receiving yards against the Lions. He's come alive, right? It seems like Caleb Williams is really looking for Keenan Allen lately and kind of leaning on him to be his guy. Allen has at least 70 receiving yards in 3 of the last 4 games. He has 15, 8, and 13 targets in 3 of his last 4 games as well. Like getting the targets, the Lions will put up points against the Bears, whether it's through like Jared Goff might struggle, but they're still going to run the ball. They're still going to put up points. So the Bears are going to have to pass, and the Lions defense just has so many injuries. I don't even know how. Like they'll figure out a way to set up Caleb Williams for the most part, but they're going to allow some points and some yardage. So Allen, I think gets it done in this game, has at least 53.5 receiving yards. And they also have him as a demon to score a touchdown, which he's scored 4 touchdowns over the last 4 weeks. So if you like that too, or maybe you just take his fantasy points once they put it up there. They haven't done that yet, but I like Keenan Allen a lot this week against the Lions.
Yeah, he had a big game the first time. He had a couple touchdowns in Detroit on Thanksgiving. So this matchup is really good for him. And I think that chemistry you saw, Caleb Williams, like it was kind of a LA respect thing that they got together and they kind of were friends before and it kind of facilitated this. That you're seeing that chemistry kind of develop here as they realized throw to Keenan Allen. So it's there. Keenan Allen is really his go-to guy. He works inside to outside quite a bit, Caleb Williams, and you'll have success doing that this week.
All right, let's now get into our FanDuel lineup. Last week, you had the Devontae Adams, Aaron Rodgers stack, which I'm sure not many had. So that was a fun one. Let's see if we can do as well this week. We'll take a quick break and then get into our FanDuel lineup. History, economics, the great works of literature, the meaning of the U.S. Constitution. Did you study these things in school? Probably not, or even if you did, maybe it's time for a refresher. Time and technology have changed a lot of things, but they have not changed basic fundamental truths about the world and our place in it. Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses Some of those courses that are available include the Constitution 101, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, A Land of Hope, and a brand new documentary style course on Marxism, socialism, and communism. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced that you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/locked-on to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/locked-on to register. All right, let's run through our FanDuel lineups for this week. We always start at quarterback. We already talked about my quarterback earlier in the show, but let's start with your quarterback, Vinnie. Who are you going with?
Well, we talked about my quarterback in the show as well. So there, I have Cooper Rush as my guy because you can play the Sunday night game on the FanDuel made slate. So I have him at 7,000. He was the most comfortable price for me for the return that I think I can get. So again, when you're looking for that return on investment, and depending if you're playing a cash game or tournament, you want to shoot for the moon in a tournament. I'm looking for at least 3x. So when I have player at 7,000, I'm hoping for 21 points from the quarterback. So that's what I'm thinking I'll get from Cooper Rush, and that's why he's my quarterback.
So I'm going with Matthew Stafford. He's actually $100 more than Cooper Rush. He's at 7,100. So if I had a bet and one guy to, score 21 points, I would feel much better about Matthew Stafford than Cooper Rush. I'm going with Stafford, and I stacked him. I paid up for Puka Nacua, but Puka Nacua has just been dominant, right? Even last week in a rain game when Cooper Kupp couldn't do anything, he still put up a nice, solid game. So this week, I think he has a monster performance. So I got Stafford and Puka as my quarterback wide receiver stack.
I actually am playing Cooper Rush naked. No, that doesn't mean he doesn't have any clothes. He is playing without CeeDee Lamb or Jake Ferguson or anybody else. I'll just go through my wide receivers. I have DJ Moore. They were very close in price, him and Keenan Allen. I think DJ Moore has a little bit of the big play upside. Maybe a lot of people will be on Allen, so it's like a slight pivot. Again, he had 2 touchdowns in the first matchup as well. So I like him, especially at home. Then this is a player we haven't, talked about this week, Josh Downs. Now,
Okay.
Yeah, he's a guy that actually had a very good game the first time. If you look at it against Tennessee, they had a bunch of trouble covering him. I think he had 66 yards and a touchdown. He was just a nightmare for them a little bit, moving him around. So we haven't talked about him a lot, but I do like him. If you're in a pinch here at your wide receiver in seasonal, I like him there. And he's a very nice price. So he's actually only 6,000. So you see him $300 cheaper than DJ Moore. And then this great matchup against the Jaguars secondary, I had to go Jacoby Myers. I feel a lot better with Aiden O'Connell in there. So I'm playing him. So I really saved some money at wide receiver. And that's probably why Cooper Rush does not get to throw to CeeDee Lamb, at least on my FanDuel lineup this week.
Yeah, so I went high on Puka, but the next two, they're not like super low, but only 6,200 and 6,300, and they play on the same team. And I also have DJ Moore. I put him in my lineup too. I also put Keenan Allen. So
nice.
As scary as trusting Caleb Williams, right? Like I don't expect him to win the game, but I expect him to be down often. They're going to have to throw, and I think both can get it done just like they did in the earlier matchup. So I went with both of them. So Puka, Keenan Allen, and DJ Moore are my 3 wide receivers. For my running backs, I'm talking up the Jonathan Taylor love this week. He's going to be ranked. I moved him up all the way to my running back 7. Now that's where he is at. And he's 7,700, not one of the most expensive running backs out there. I think he can have a huge game. I think he has a couple touchdowns, so I went with him. And I paid up for Jahmyr Gibbs as well without David Montgomery. So I went really expensive there with Gibbs and then a little bit lower with Taylor.
Yeah, I spent a bit at running back too, but I played the hot hand approach from last week, and I played James Conner because I think he keeps it up against the Panthers run defense. We saw Rico Dowdle almost break 150 rushing yards on them. Didn't score, but Connor is a scoring machine. We know that. He scored twice last week, so I like him. And I'm going Aaron Jones, falling his little heater there against the Bears. They get the Seahawks. Seahawks are not very good against the run. He looked really good to me last week, and Cam Akers stole a touchdown from him. And Sam Darnold last week will be okay with that. But Aaron Jones has the potential to take over games. They can also use him a lot as a receiver because the Seahawks have had a lot of trouble with linebacker play this season. So I look at that, and that is definitely a weakness. So go with Connor and Jones there as my backfield.
Nice. And then for my flex. This is another guy we talked about in our sleeper segment. It's Travis Etienne. I'm rolling with him. I think we've already talked about him, right? Great matchup. He's been more involved. He's looking better. So I'm going to trust what I'm saying. I like him this week, so I'm going to put him into my FanDuel lineup.
Yeah, if we're going to mention something, we're going to back it up and play our guys. Like that's the way it is. And I have a guy that we'd also talked about. I would consider him the runner-up in our sleeper running back discussion. I have Jerome Ford. I'm flexing him, and he's very cheap, so he's what I could afford there because I did pay up a tight end, and I'll just reveal my tight end. I just went for Trey McBride. I wanted him and Connor. Nice. Again, McBride may not score because Connor could steal. It doesn't matter. Wherever the touchdowns come between those two guys, I'm fine. But McBride should go off here. So looking at his price, it wasn't as kind of as intimidating as I thought, 7,500. So yeah, I'll play him, and he's as good as like putting in a wide receiver that's going to be targeted a ton this week.
Yeah, I wish I got to get Trey McBride in my lineup. That would have been great. I did not have the money for it because I paid up elsewhere, but I went with Brenton Strange. I really like him this week. I think, without Evan Ingram, he has a chance to get 10 targets again. Now he is dealing with a bit of a shoulder injury. He missed practice on Wednesday. Keep an eye on that. Right. But he's expected to be okay. So if he's out there, I'm going to keep him in. Of course, I'll keep an eye and change him out if he's not there. And then for my defense, I went with the Seahawks. Again, I had to go really cheap, right?
Yeah.
I know they're playing the Vikings, but at least the Seahawks are at home. Sam Darnold can make stupid decisions. He could throw a pick six. So I'm going for the upside. I know it's risky, but I had to go cheap.
Yeah, I don't know how cheap. I think I was the middle of the road cheap, but 4,000. It surprised me how cheap the Falcons were because you look at a lot of the rankings for defense. They're coming off a heater game against the Raiders where they're blocking punts and making plays. Like they're doing extra stuff that we always forget can give us fantasy points. So they are at home and they've got Michael Penix Jr. starting, but that defense could have a big impact again. I think they're starting to feel it. Raheem Morris and it's Drew Lock on the other side. Sacks and picks could be in the offing here with a lot of playmakers in that secondary. Justin Simmons and some guys they can disrupt and make something happen for the Falcons. So I took them. I was just surprised how rather cheap they were. They were in relation to other defenses, and they fit right into my lineup.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what they do in that game? But
yeah,
we both kind of went risky there, but it's okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Any defense can have a six.
We're loaded elsewhere, so that's why.
Exactly. It's going to be great. I'm looking forward to it. Now I just need Matthew Stafford to blow up this week because I feel like I have a lot of him everywhere going on in my daily fantasy lineups. But that is it for today's show. I want to thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. I hope you all win your fantasy matchups. And then next week we can prep you for that Super Bowl for your finals. We'll get you ready. We'll talk to you on Monday. Bye, y'all.